You know, as parents, we all want to believe that we know what's best for our children. But what happens when what we believe is best is not? Well, that is what happened in Oregon. Sarah Mitchell gave birth to twins on March 5th, 2017 at home. The babies were almost 2 months premature. And when the newborns had trouble breathing, the parents chose to pray instead of seeking immediate medical attention. Both are members of the Followers of Christ Church, and that's a sect that rejects modern medicine. One of her daughters died 4 hours after birth, and on Monday, Sarah and her husband Travis Mitchell pleaded guilty to criminal negligent homicide. Of course, this is an extreme example of parents making a controversial medical decision, but it's not the only one. Some are comparing this to kind of the debate right now over mandatory vaccinations. There are a lot of parents that insist there's a link between autism and vaccines, even though scientific studies have disproved that, but it hasn't silenced the debate. 18 states now allow non-medical exemptions for vaccines. And there's a recent study that shows 12 of those states have shown an upward trend of enrolling kindergartners with those exemptions since 2009. And, you know, despite the fact that studies show lowered vaccination rates can lead to outbreaks that endanger all of us, not just the child who's not being vaccinated, it's still being done. So Opinion Nation here, how much control should parents have over their child's medical care? Are there times the government should step in to keep us all safe? Let's talk about it. Daria Long-Gillespie, she is an emergency room doctor and clinical assistant professor at the University of Tennessee. Heather Hansen is a criminal defense attorney, and Jill Simonian is an author and a parenting contributor from thefabmom.com. Thank you all for being with me. Dr. Gillespie, I want to start with you. How much control should parents have here? I mean, I'm sure you have parents where you advise them something and they decide to do something completely different.
You're right, Lynn, and that happens in the ER. There are oftentimes that parents make decisions that aren't what I would necessarily make for my own child. Now, if those decisions are born out of them really wanting to do what's right for their child, usually that's considered within their own rights as parents. However, there's the line that the government draws, and there's precedent. The Supreme Court says that the right to religious freedom does not include putting your child's life in danger. So when that happens, the law really commands us to step in the best interest of the child. In between is a gray area, though.
Yeah, that's the difficult. Where's that line? Heather, you know, we saw the Mitchells here. They did plead guilty to negligent homicide. And we should also point out in this plea deal, the church had to include in their teachings that they need to seek medical care, followers, that is. So when should the government step in and say, listen, we're going to tell you what the law is that you need to follow regardless of whether or not you're parents?
You know, ultimately in most states, Lynn, it comes down to when the child is put at moral danger, like here. So most of the states say that parents can make medical decisions based on their religious beliefs as long as it doesn't put the children in danger of death or serious bodily harm. There are about 6 states, it's hard to tell exactly what the statutes are, that say that there is a religious exemption even when it puts the children in harm. And you see situations where followers of this same sect in other states like Oregon and Virginia actually are not prosecuted because there is this immunity. So the courts are trying to balance religious freedoms with children's health, and that's not as easy a balance as we might think.
And, you know, Jill, I just want to get your take as a parent. I mean, some anti-vaxxers out there might throw something at the TV if you heard a comparison to not vaccinating your kids. But let's keep in mind, some of the things that children could get by not vaccinating them, they could die from. That's why we're making the comparison. What's your take?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And hi, Lynn, you know, it's good to see you. I will tell you, as someone of faith, as a mom to 2 daughters, with my husband being a doctor, this whole thing is tragic, number one, obviously. But as a parent, you know, in this parenting community, we all say, oh, we don't want to judge each other. We don't want to judge each other. But in cases like this, when kids are being put in danger, when it's threatening to their lives, and when it turns out something like this, and especially lots of times now, in the cases of people not wanting to vaccinate their kids, it's a dangerous situation, and I am going to judge. I'm going to judge that you're putting your child in danger. I'm going to judge that you're putting all of us in danger as a community when it comes to, oh, I don't believe in this, when you're not listening to the science behind it.
When it could harm my kid. Dr. Gillespie, you know, I've been here as a parent. You have the emergency room or your doctor on call saying to you, you need to go to the ER now, but Mom, it's your call. And that's a difficult thing to figure out. It's happened to me several times. And really, is that sort of covering their tail when it comes to legally, that if you make this decision, this is on you?
You know, Lynn, that is hard to do. It's always tough to be a mom. I have 2 kids myself. I think that is getting to the power of the mommy gut and how strong that mommy gut can be. But I like what both our panelists have said in that there is parental decision making. There are those gray areas. But what all of my patients have to understand is that no matter what we do, there are always risks and benefits. You know, for the vaccination, again, we're not talking parenting styles. We're not talking if you want to do cry it out or attachment theory here. We're talking about things that really can affect your child's health. And I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day who had seen a child that was not vaccinated, but as a result at the age of 3 was at risk and needed potentially a spinal tap for meningitis that they wouldn't have been at risk for had they been vaccinated. So that's where all this risk and benefit comes into balance.
And I saw someone just tweeted here an opinion. Well, maybe there should be a law requiring vaccinations. I mean, it's kind of interesting because that doesn't go to the religious belief, because there are non-medical exemptions that are out there. But when it comes to parents saying, listen, it's my belief, I don't think I should have to do this, do laws need to change here, Heather?
You know, I think that we really need to take this on a case-by-case basis. I don't know that the laws need to change. I think that more conversation, more education, more conversation, more questions will oftentimes allow people to have a meeting of the minds. Doctors have to be able to talk to their patients. They have to discuss the risks and benefits. Patients need to be well educated. So many of the things that we see on the news about medical issues is fake news, just like the political fake news that we talk about. And so I think that before we start resorting to changing laws, we have to start changing the conversations and making sure that we're having a meeting of the minds and overcoming some of the ignorance that's out there.
And, you know, Jill, we cherry-picked the vaccine conversation, but there's also the debate on what's considered abuse. You know, if you spank your kids or you verbally abuse your kids, as horrible as that is, what is it? How much of that is your choice as a parent to be just terrible at parenting by doing that?
Well, I like to come from the perspective of, we like to say, oh, none of us parents know what we're doing. Give ourselves more credit than we're giving ourselves, currently. A lot of us do know what we're doing, but we have to know what we're doing and have, a faith and fortitude in what we're doing by being informed and listening to the experts, listening to the research, talking to other parents, and really being reasonable with reconciling our own beliefs, whether they be faith-based or spanking or whatever. But we got to listen and be receptive to what the research says about what does what and what causes what. And I mean, of course, this case obviously is the most tragic.
Yeah, and Heather, real quick, I want to get back to this case and whether or not the church should have responsibility here and whether or not they should face any charges, because there was another couple that faced charges for neglecting their child.
There's a lot of these cases, Lynn. If you compare the child death rates in that church to the national, it's about 10 times the rate. So there's definitely an issue here. At the same time, though, I'm reluctant. I mean, the First Amendment protects our religious freedoms. I'm reluctant to say that a church should bear liability for their beliefs. Again, there's got to be some sort of a balance. There's got to be an understanding of what it is that the church believes, what these followers believe, and how that can be put into effect, but still protecting those children. I have to believe that there's a way to find a compromise.
Daria, how frustrating is it for you as a physician to deal with some of this gray area that you face?
You know what, Lynn? I always try to come at it for most of these cases, especially in the gray areas, from the perspective of often we're moms. We have that in common. And the one thing we have in common is that our motivation is our child's health. So we have that in common. So I may disagree with the decision they're making about that, but I can't make a judgment on their motivation. So if we come from that, then we're not attacking each other. We're able to say, we have this in common. Let's talk. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at your fears, and let's come to an answer together.
Well, and as Jill points out, be open-minded. Be open to other people's thoughts. Trust me, I listen to everyone that'll tell me something because I have no idea what I'm doing. Ladies, thank you so much for being with me. It was an interesting conversation. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn.
Sure.